Good morning. It's always good to see you all and to see who randomly joins us as we talk about how we can be healthier and how we can help other people be healthier. This week, as I prepared to teach about processed foods, one of the first thoughts that hit me was, well, everybody knows they're bad for you. However, not everybody knows what we can do, what we cannot eat, what we shouldn't be eating, and what to do about it. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. Um, Part of my life when I was very young, I lived on what was called a self-contained farm. My grandmother and grandfather's farm out in Plainfield, Georgia, which is near Eastman, Georgia. So on a self-contained farm, you grow everything you eat. The only thing they bought was flour because they did not grow wheat, of course, that far south. By the time I came along, we were still pretty much doing the same thing. Huge gardens, uh, huge vegetable and fruit preparation to store for the rest of the year, as well as cows, pigs, beef, milk products, and everything. So if mother went to the grocery store, it wasn't for a very big order. But generally, the food was grown there. Um, so I grew up in a family that, for the most part, we grew our own food, prepared our own food. And during the years of raising my children, I did basically the same thing. I bought very few processed foods. In fact, if they got to eat something like Kraft macaroni and cheese at a friend's house, they thought it was a delicacy because ours were basically green and yellow vegetable, prepared from scratch, a meat, usually carefully cooked, baked or grilled or boiled or something. We did very little frying even then. So I've been a health nut for as long as I can remember. But what has happened in the years when the kids were grown and Glenn and I are, and we do a lot of traveling and teaching and everything, as well as just the sheer fact of busy housewife. What's happened is I bought a lot more convenience foods. And even though I may flip that label over and look at them, as long as I have studied, I still cannot take a highlighter and tell you which are healthy ingredients and which are not. I know some that are bad, and I know some that are okay. And then the other thing that we're doing in the busy life that most of us are living is we're eating out more often. And so, what happens in our bodies then? It's not just, okay, we've got the head knowledge. We know processed foods aren't good for you or probably aren't good for you. But what about this lifestyle we're living? We're on our way to a meeting. We're on our way back from a meeting. You're realizing, oh, I don't even have time to get home and do a proper meal prep. What can I pick up at the deli or at the grocery store? So we are living these huge, busy, stressful, work-driven, culture-driven lives already. That's bad enough. And our bodies have to have food and water if we're going to live. So we are in the situation of, in order to change my health and my life, do I need to change my lifestyle first, or do I need to change what I'm eating and what I'm feeding my family? And I think that it's a both and answer. But this morning, our main thing is working through this jungle of processed foods. Now, when I started teaching about free radicals in the late 80s, people thought I was the free radical because they were questioning, oh, where did you hear about this? I've never heard about this. My doctors never said a word about free radicals. No, it was probably going to be, for many doctors, another 20 or 30 years before they knew about free radicals because they weren't taught that in med school. And even now, even when I started doing intensive research on free radicals, oxidative stress about 15 years ago, it was the rare physician that even had heard of them. One doctor said, I've heard of them, but I don't know what they are. Can you explain it to me? Because it was not until after 1985 that it was even mentioned in a medical textbook. But what's happening now? Well, 2025, which is many years post 1985, you're hearing about oxidative stress everywhere. And you're hearing that oxidative stress is the imbalance between the bad free radicals and the good antioxidant enzymes your body makes. And by now, you know that the efforts to take these good antioxidant enzymes didn't work. It's only when you activate your body to make the good antioxidant enzymes that they're able to come up and push down the production of these uh, free radicals that are the cause of oxidative stress. By now, almost every doctor can tell you that oxidative stress causes every disease you can name. And so we're at a different time, and we're also at a different time in our country. Now, I don't do politics on our Wednesday Wellness, but I want to tell you, I have been studying Robert Kennedy's work for many, many years. I find that he is science driven, not opinion driven. And he's had his own bad experiences with his own health, which makes all of us dig a little bit deeper, I think. So, on the subjects of processed foods, for the most part, it's a choice. So, let's look at some of the reasons that we want to perhaps steer away from oxidative stress, as well as um, not just staying away from it, but uh, actually trying to. Sorry, I'm going to change this a little bit here, if I can. Oh well. Um, not just stay away from as many processed foods, but to learn how do we incorporate some of the processed foods that are convenience. And heaven knows we all need convenience now. You don't typically have a woman dedicated to be in the kitchen all day long in meal preparation. It just doesn't contribute to our lifestyle. And we don't have a lot of extra family members now. Years and years ago, it was fairly common that there was an extra person in the household. It could have been an old maid aunt. It could be one of the grandmothers whose husbands had died. There was usually an extra person in the household uh, whose job it was to help meal prep and to cook. But nowadays, busy women are not only, what's that song? Bring home the bacon and frying it in the pan. They're having to do more than they were designed. And with a lot of families, the husband hops in. At our house, there was one child assigned to the kitchen every night to help mom. There were two reasons for that. One, I needed help. Secondly, that's the way I found out what happened at school every day. In truth, a lot of their time was spent sitting on the counter, just hop down, set the table, put the water in the glasses, this type of thing. But on the other hand, I got to hear what happened at school today. So, Carol, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are seeing your screen.
Okay. All right. So, the first thing, let's just jump right in here and say at first glance, the answer is yes. Consumption of processed foods, especially ultra processed foods, and you'll see this UPF is linked to increased oxidative stress. So, what I just told you is true. Oxidative stress has become a household term really in the last decade. Then they just explain oxidative stress, which I did, but I want you to be aware now of how easy it is to pull this up in conversation with someone uh, when you're trying to explain what oxidative stress is, or free radicals, how easy it is to pull it up. And this is the sentence we're looking for this morning. This imbalance can be, look at this word, caused by various factors, including poor diet, environmental toxins, and stress. We knew this, and we are working toward lowering oxidative stress. But as a culture, I know that family's the hardest to work with. I'm working with someone in my family right now that I dearly love, who cannot get better because she's convinced that medical science is going to find a pill for her. And so she continues every day ignoring the facts about how her body can make the changes. All right. Uh, he mentions here that um, how to processed foods contribute to oxidative stress. It's simple. High levels of refined carbohydrates, saturated trans fats, and added sugar. They trigger the production of reactive oxidative stress and contribute to oxidative stress. Why? Because one, they're low in antioxidants and fiber. Um, they have additives, artificial ingredients. We're going to talk more about it. Um, Processed meats um, can contain advanced glycation. They call this age, advanced glycation. Um, These are formed during processing and cooking and contribute to oxidative stress. I want to say that I think this is one of the number one ones. Now, I'm picky around here about buying what we call deli meat around here that doesn't have nitrates in it. We've had two growing teenage boys who love a what they call a deli sandwich. Thank you, Mick, who named my big lunch sandwiches deli sandwiches, and so that's become the household word. And I try to get as natural of the meat as I can, but after my studies this past 2 weeks, we're fixing to start phasing them out of the refrigerator. We're going to have to come up with something else, probably a little bit more work for me and Krista when they're home, because a quick sandwich is nice for lunch, than the processed meats. And you know why? It messes up the gut microbiome. And you see here the consequences of oxidative stress. This one I pulled up to give you a quick way of going through this information with the people you're trying to help. Cardiovascular, type 2 diabetes, cancer, neurodegenerative, inflammatory bowel disease. These are all the oxidative stress are key factors. So, how do you reduce it? Well, we're going to talk later about how the best way to reduce it. But one, your diet, and reduce your consumption of processed foods, sugary drinks, processed meats. Include fruits of foods like berries, nuts, seeds, leafy greens. You know this. If you have obesity, you're going to have to drop that weight. And of course, managing stress, which is one of the awful things that we're all having to deal with. It's just stressful lives. This was a very good article here that spells it out like it is. Ultra processed diet, systemic oxidative stress, and breach of immunological tolerance. How many people do you know who have an autoimmune disease? How many people do you know that are dealing with any of these big guys I just named? If it all goes back to oxidative stress, and if oxidative stress is greatly driven by processed foods, then to change a health trajectory in our nation and in ourselves, we have to be wiser. Um, Globally, the consumption of ultra processed food is increasing. That is true. We travel. I don't travel as much internationally, but even my last few international trips, there's so many more fast food restaurants. If you go into the grocery store, so many more ultra processed convenience food. And for many of the people, these are a new taste from their traditional foods, and they will buy them and they will eat them. And then they begin to become sicker and sicker. Um, the big three we've talked about, this processed diet creates oxidative stress, inflammation, and gut disorders. Uh, and this is the big one I mentioned. It can also refigure and configure your immune cells. Uh, this last sentence, a possible connection between diet, systemic oxidative stress, and the immune system could implicate a lower tolerance of the immune system and increased risk of infections. Have you ever known as many sick people as we have now? Out here, we've got a doctor shortage, and trying to get in and see a primary care physician is almost impossible. And what do primary care physicians, what's their job? They're the front line to identify you need a specialist, you need an antibiotic, or you need to come back in a few months and we're going to run some labs. So this is a very interesting thing, this little part of this, because it talks about the ultra processed foods leading to cellular alterations. Because this chronic oxidative stress state leads to an environment um, that causes um, that causes the immune cells to not be able to do their job. You'll be interested in this sentence. Likewise, the decrease in the transcription factor NRF2 owing to the accelerated production of reactive oxygen species, which is oxidative stress, leads to changes in immune function in response to infection. So, as you're going through this, those of you, I know that some of you do go back and read more deeply because you tell me about it during the week. Most of the ingredients that we consider that makes a food processed are going to be preservatives, stabilizers, emulsifiers, solvents, binders, bulking agents, sweeteners, sensory enhancer, flavorings, and colorings. Nutritionally, they are not recommended foods for consumption. Now, they're saying here, well, it's okay every now and then, but most people are eating ultra processed diets every day. You'll notice this next one, high consumption of simple sugars and saturated fats, let's say donuts and pastries, and an ultra processed diet leads to alterations in the redox state, in the gut, and the inflammatory response. In recent decades, and this is so true, the study of oxidative stress has attracted great interest in the medical field. For a long time, and this is true back in the years when uh, I was privileged to be able to know about it and study it. It was a specific field of chemistry, biology, and physics. But now, these alterations produced by oxidative stress have become an important factor known to generate what? A wide variety of diseases. So there you go. For people who think that you don't know what you're talking about, you can pull up this article. He goes on to talk about, or the writer does, how that obesity and chronic inflammation, we've known for a long time that this leads to lower immune tolerance. He's they're indicating here that the systemic oxidative stress greatly caused by processed foods are leading to the changes in the endocrine system, the immune system, and in basically how the body works. So we're going to skip on down here. There's so much here that we could have done the whole thing on this one article. The simple sugars, low fiber intake, caloric intake, Even if your calories are the same, now get this, this is important. Even if your calories are the same with processed food and non processed food, your ultra processed food causes more weight gain than your simple foods. Oxidative stress, immune response, nutritional considerations. So as we as we bring this whole little article together, what are they saying? They're saying mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress related to a diet high in sugars are the trigger for a chronic pro-oxidative state and all of the bad things it does in your body. Okay, now let's look at this little scientific study because there's so much out there. Again, every time I get started on this, I'm like, man, this needs to be a whole book, and I can't even finish the one I'm working on. Increased dietary intake of ultra processed foods and mitochondrial metabolism alterations in what? Pediatric obesity. Have you ever seen such fat children? Have you ever seen such fat people? Now, part of this is not just the convenience of processed foods, it's the price. You think, oh, they cost more. Well, they don't cost more than organic fruits and vegetables. People simply can't afford to eat as healthy as they want to eat. It's not that they're just, you got all these women laying on the couch watching. I used to say soap operas, but I don't think they even have soap operas out there anymore. Maybe they do. I don't know much about what's on TV, but it's not that. It's that people are so driven by stress. They're exhausted, they're fatigued. What am I going to feed my family tonight? Or what do I want to eat? Now, given if processed foods were not so unhealthy, I'd choose a pastry or a donut, a piece of pie every time. I'm simply telling you the truth. I would. I have to control my diet because I like to eat bad stuff, but I don't. I'm very careful about what I eat. Um, this is the thing we're looking at. We're looking at changes in a global food system. The food market has expanded in a huge way with processed foods, infant formulas, food that children eat that they become almost addicted to. Well, really, they are addicted to, are breaking down the health from the womb to the grave. Um, and as they talk about this word, the satiety signaling, um, we feel more satisfied with these unhealthy foods, but then we want them more often. So it is not just altering the insulin response. What you eat, your insulin goes up, your blood sugar goes up, or it goes down, or it remains stable. You want stable, but it also promotes the storage of excess nutrients in adipose, which is fat tissue. Now, why would it do that? Well, I've told you before that your toxins are stored in your fat. And if you're eating a lot of toxins, I think I lost that one. If you're eating a lot of toxins, your body is going to make more fat. You'll be betrayed because your body will say, I need to make more fat to store all of these bad things, all of these additives. Now, processed foods, by definition, are the raw agricultural products that have been changed from their original state. So, what if we get some spinach? What if we grow spinach in our backyard versus organic spinach in the grocery store that was imported from, say, Mexico? I don't know if they grow spinach there. Versus a box of cream spinach from the frozen food section. Of course, one's going to be healthier than the other, but what is more convenient? It's to grab that box of cream spinach, um, sling it in the microwave, which alters the food molecules right there, and eat it. And then it probably tastes better than the spinach in your backyard. So you're taking a raw agricultural product, whether regardless of whether it's spinach or apples or artichokes, it won't matter, and you're changing them. Now, the thing that we do have to talk through if we have time this morning is that basic steps washing, cutting, and cooking processed food, right? And you're like, oh, yeah, but I love grabbing that bag of organic kale that's already washed and ready. We all do. It's not going to be as nutritionally healthy for you, but that type of processing, of us live with, we're not going to give up. So that is processed food. But when you get to ultra processed, and these are the things you've got to look for, you're looking for all those little words on the label because that's going to be the preservatives, the flavoring, and other additives. Now, many of us buy jarred or canned um, spaghetti sauce, right? It used to be that if I was going to make spaghetti, it was a pretty long day affair because you had to prepare all of your ingredients, cook them to a certain state, and but I did it all the time. I The only processed food I might have used during that time was a couple of cans of tomatoes or some tomato paste or something like that. Now I'll buy the jar in the grocery store. So how do I use some processed foods but not the ultra processed? I will turn the jar of spaghetti sauce around and I'm going to look for the smallest amount of ingredients: tomatoes, olive oil, spices, um, vegetables. That's what I'm going to look for. If it's got a list of all these things I don't know and can't pronounce, I'm not going to buy it, and regardless of the price, because I know it is bad for my family and bad for me. So these are the categories of processed food. What I'm talking about: foods that have been washed, dried, frozen, and vacuum packed. Now, the second category in what they consider processed foods, they will have had oil, butter, sugar, salt added. That's taste. Three, um, they're going to combine the first category and the second one. They use the example canned tuna, fruits and syrup, and salted nuts. But then this is where we get to the real dangerous part of what are processed foods. Is category four. The ultra processed foods are industrial formulations. So if you go to your pantry today and you decided, okay, I'm going to divide my pantry into natural foods, category one, two, or three, and industrial formulations, that's when you get to ultra processed food. What are the industrial formulations that are made from food components? It's going to have some food in it. They're going to include additives that are rare or non-existent in culinary use, like emulsifiers, hydrogenated oils, uh, synthetic colors, texture improvers, flavor enhancers. They use the example chips, soda, instant soup, pastries, and mass produced foods. It's the last category where these industrial formulated foods are raising so many red flags because, guys, they simply taste better. You have to get that taste out of your system before you can even really like the taste of natural food again. So, this little statement here I thought was profound, and we've got one more thing, and then we're going to go to questions and answers and talking about what you can do about it. We have no way of telling whether the disease outcome is due to the intake of that food or whether it is a reflection of overall diet and lifestyle. You see, it doesn't take a whole lot of ultra processed food to damage your health, and that's for a lifetime. This last little thing here that you can hit, we've really talked about most of it right here. Other than this, the highly processed food accounts for 60% of U.S. adults' caloric consumption. Children is closer to 70%. You're like, what? The children are eating industrial formulations that we call food? That's right. Packaged snacks, sodas, frozen pizzas, sweetened cereal, instant soups. Um, no wonder we have children with obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular, and cancer. Um, they are lower in fiber, micronutrients, phytochemicals. Um, so this is a great one, and he's saying well, this article is saying it's been going on for more than a century. Yeah, of course it has. Um, Here they're indicating here that saccharin, which is the sugar substitute, was invented in 1879. Now get this, the first formula of Coca-Cola syrup contained a slew of ingredients. It was invented in 1886. I don't even know how the chemist up there in Watkinsville who did formula, the pharmacist who made Coca-Cola, I don't even know how he knew these things existed. Um, but they're saying here that it was actually around the turn of the 20th century that a German chemist discovered that adding hydrogen to vegetable or fish oils could solidify them. And that's how we got margarine. Some of you are old enough to remember taking the little plastic bag of this substance, which basically was emulsified fat, and it had a little red dye tablet in it. And your job was to squish it up, squish it up, squish it up until it looked like butter. And then it just went into the butter mold at your house that had traditionally been used for pure creamery butter from the cows. It was so much more convenient. And I well remember loving to mix that up. We thought, and until I was actually studying this on my own as an adult, that margarine was healthier than butter. We have been fooled greatly. We've had the wool pulled over our eyes by this by the food market. Okay, it was not until 2015, guys. Oh, by the way, they mentioned that trans fats found their way into everything from hot dogs and mayonnaise to Oreos, which became popular in 1910. It was not until 2015 that trans fats were banned. However, you're going to find them in so many places, especially in restaurant eating. The larger boom in highly processed food occurred after World War II. They were having to figure out how do we feed our troops. So they came up with longer shelf life, all sorts of things, freeze drying, chemical preservatives. And then, of course, it made its way into the American kitchen. It was not the ultra processed food first appeared in writing in the 1980s. Those were the years, guys. We were learning a lot. But it wasn't in local understanding until 2009 when a professor in Brazil began to talk about it. The thing you are going to need to look for yourself and for your family, is when you look on the side of a box or a jar or a can and you see things that you know are industrial formulations. That is what's so dangerous. They're saying here that ultra processed or minimally processed foods, unprocessed or minimally processed, fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, seeds, eggs, meat, poultry, pasta, plain yogurt, and coffee. Processed ingredients: sugar, honey, maple syrup, vegetable oils, butter, and vinegar. Now, we've only used pure maple syrup in our house since our visit to Vermont back in the 70s. I learned the difference at that time between log cabin syrup sitting in my cabinet, which I thought was maple syrup, didn't know the real difference. Until then, the trip in Vermont, I was like, these taste different. And then I began to realize, wait a minute, why have I got this junk in my pantry? Does it cost more? Yes, but we use less. And then we don't eat a lot of packaged pancakes out of boxes around my house either. So you're looking at processed foods, um, nuts, cured meats, canned fish, vegetables, cheeses, and freshly made bread from your local bakery, ultra processed, commercially produced bread. I'm going to guarantee there's a loaf in every home. There is in mine. Now, mine is Dave's Organic, but it's still got some stuff in it probably shouldn't be in there. I'm going to read it today. Breakfast cereals, flavored yogurts, hot dogs, frozen meals, potato chips, soft drinks, and candy bars. So I think if we had the health patrol to go through every pantry, every kitchen, they're going to find in every kitchen things that for the most part we know shouldn't be there. So, what I want to recommend to you, I've told you before the importance of a C reactive protein metabolic test. It's CR-P. Now, almost every insurance company will pay for it now. When I started asking for it years ago, um, they had to look it up. They had to make sure my insurance company was going to pay for it. And I was saying, I want it, whether my insurance company is going to pay for it at all. Why? I was looking for levels of inflammation. So, levels of inflammation uh, traditionally increase with age. But after I started taking our NRF2 activator and understanding that the American Heart Association says that our NRF2 activator, Protandim, this is on PubMed, will reduce CRP levels by 50%. I started insisting that people with arthritis get a CRP test and a sed rate test. People with any type of metabolic disease, cardiovascular, neurodegenerative, diabetes, everything, unexplained pain like fibromyalgia, get a CRP test. Then those markers, you want them less than 1% ideally. If they're high and you've been taking Protandim for at least 4 to 6 months, you are taking it with something that's interfering with it. Secondly, your gut may be in such disorder that it can't really absorb practically anything you're eating. If that's the case, put it into liquid form and you're like, ugh, that tastes horrible. Yes, it does. But Dr. Marvin used to drop his Protandim in one of those little shot glasses before bedtime. The next morning, he stirred it up and drank it down. Some people will put it in a little bit of grape juice or some strong drink. But sometimes people just have to man up, right? They have to man up. And if they're like, okay, I don't think my CRP levels are high, I think I'm going to have to make a change here. You may go to liquid form. I crack mine up into 4 pieces before I swallow it because Dr. Marvin, some of you've heard me say, told me one day people as old as you and me have a hard time absorbing tablets. And that's when he told me how he did his liquid. Now, because this distorts your mitochondria, this ultra processed foods distorts your mitochondria. Yes, taking the NRF1 will most likely improve not just the vitality of your mitochondria, but the production of your mitochondria. And then the one that I lost was about your NAD, about how the NAD is so important for uh, energy, metabolism, the proper usage of your food, and longevity. and that the ultra processed foods are the enemies to this. It's the enemies to it. So when we talk about processed foods this morning and what to do about them, I want to say the first thing I want to say is eliminate as many of those as possible. Look for better selections in the grocery store. Secondly, when you can, grow as much of your own food. And you're like, I can't do that. I live in the city. Well, you may be able to do a few things. I had friends that they sort of followed my teachings and they got a little house in downtown Kansas City and turned their yard into a vegetable garden. Their front area from the sidewalk up to their door was practically all vegetables, and people would stop and ask them about it. Um, and I'm sure other people seeing it decided, well, I'm gonna plant those in my existing grass too. Think about how much we spend on annuals and pre-annuals every year, just making our homes and our lives more attractive. Flowers and plants add so much to it. But if you realize I can't possibly afford those organic vegetables, grow them in your yard, grow them in your windowsill, grow them wherever you can, grow the sprouts, the seeds. Try to change your sources of food, try to get them the least processed possible. And then busy, busy women and busy, busy men, because some men are the cooks in their home. Try to only buy the minimally processed foods. The industrial formulations, teach your family not to eat them. Uh, Instant mashed potatoes were a big rave when I was growing up because we hadn't had anything like that before. And it was amazing to get those mashed potatoes and just put milk or water and some butter in them and stir them up. And yeah, they did taste a little cardboardy. In fact, our family, I don't even remember us using them but once or twice because we were used to food that tasted like it had just been raised in the backyard or the garden. So we eliminated all sorts of that. And I have to tell you that almost everything instant is going to be bad for you. But we don't have to eat as much, do we? And we don't have to eat as often. So when we think about processed foods and what to do about them, first, try to eliminate them as much as possible. Third, I realized probably 20 years ago that I could no longer teach that diet and exercise was enough. Now, I've always hated exercise except swimming, uh, but I really thought that we could manipulate the amino acids which are in your foods enough to go in and correct all sorts of disorders. Well, I found out that wasn't true. I am a breast cancer survivor. I was the village health nut when I got breast cancer. It wasn't from processed foods, however. But I will have to say I was living a very, very busy life, and I'm not so sure my kids were pretty much grown by the time that I was eating as carefully as I should have. All too often, it was just grab something and keep going. So, what you can do is what you cannot eliminate, you're going to treat for. There's nothing better out there for dealing with the bad effects of processed food than our very own NRF2 activator, Protandim. It's going to drop oxidative stress, which is produced by free radicals, which is greatly caused by processed foods. Figure out how to take it. It always makes me sad when some mother gives up on it because she's like, I just can't get him to take it. Um, Figure out a way. Pray, find a way to get that down your child. Probably if there's no ADD, ADHD, autism, or continuing infections, autoimmune disorders, they may not need it until they're 17 or 18. But I will tell you, if you talk to Hudson and Hunter, especially, they will tell you that they feel like it has contributed so much to their health and well-being when they're going on these long trips and now being away 3 and 6 months at a time. They are making sure they've packed it. The same thing for you all, true with your NRF1 and your NAD. These are preventatives for not just health and disease, but they just help to contribute to a better life. So we're out of time. Carol, let's go to questions and answers.